There we go. All right. I'm actually the co-chair. Where's McConnell? Steve? Steve McConnell is the other co-chair, and the committee is made up of 11 people from AICPA and 11 people from NASBA. And it's important to have longevity on this committee with members because there's such a history to the Uniform Accountancy Act. And obviously the point is that we want NASBA, we're looking for uniformity. So is the AICPA, so that as individuals move around, they know what the statute is. If all the states and the 5 jurisdictions use the UAA, then we would know what the statute is when we move from one jurisdiction to another. So real quick, I've got to do this in 10 minutes, and it's 45 minutes worth of work. So we're gonna move here. Here is the committee. You can see that, and we broke this committee down into 6 task forces because all of these tasks were given to the committee by other committees either within AICPA or within NASBA. So it's not what Steve and I came up with, it's what we were asked to address. So we broke, in order to be able to get all this done in a year to a 2-year period, we broke the committee into these 6 task forces. And all the task forces have now have reported, and so I've got results to share with you. On the retired inactive CPAs, one of the co-chairs on this task force was or is an attorney, and they looked at what does retired mean, what are you allowed to do as a licensee if you are retired, and do you whether or not you have an active certificate. So their conclusion is that the UAA committee should recommend both to the NASBA board at its July meeting and the AICPA board at its August meeting that instead of using the term retired in the UAA and in the rules, that we should use the term inactive because it is a broader term than retired, because you can stop out for a while, decide to come back in, that's inactive, but you're not retired. Or if you are retired, truly retired, and you're not working for compensation, you're still inactive. And because people don't understand, there seem to be some misconception about what the term retired means and what can you do if you're the church treasurer or the Lions Club treasurer or whatever. So the task force made that recommendation that we should use the term inactive, and so that'll be the recommendation that goes forth. The definition of a test. This is kind of like it's like the political tar baby, because this dude is going nowhere real quick, I assure you. We've had it for over a year, and what we're now waiting on is the AICPA took on the responsibility of developing a white paper for the term attest, and so that there would not be any unintended consequences when we change the definition. Notice I quickly stepped off that word if, because we know that the definition has to change, because Richard, there's only one attestation standard referred to in the UAA, and that is the attestation standard on rendering an opinion on forecasted financial statements. So, and we now have 16 attestation standards. So the term attest needs to be changed. We just do not want to have any unintended consequences. So when we get the white paper, our task force, 2 people from the AICPA, 2 from NASBA, and we have a couple of resource people, we'll go forward with this, and hopefully when you have this meeting next year, the UAA committee will have a recommendation as to what we need to do with the term attest. The confidentiality and whistleblowing, that is chaired by Michael Weatherwax, who's sitting right here. And and Melissa from Idaho, her last name just went, Nelson, just went away. Yeah, it takes a little while for a senior moment, I guess. But anyway, they are the co-chairs of that task force. And what's been decided is that if the fees haven't been paid, the product hasn't been delivered, the CPA is not under any obligation at that point in time to return the work papers or the client's records, and both sides are in agreement with that. So on the other side, if whether the NASBA group believes, and so do 32 state boards of accountancy, believe that whether or not the work product has been delivered and the fees haven't been paid, that that the registrant still should return all of the work papers and any that the registrant created to be able to do the tax return or and that's basically what we're talking about. We're not so much talking about work papers for audits. And then on the whistleblower part of this right here is it's very controversial, and it is also very complex. It is not something that you just come up with, and the task force just creates a rule. Michael and Melissa and Noel Allen and Virgil Webb, who's the attorney for the AICPA, have been working on some language about when it is appropriate to break the principle of confidentiality, and when do you break that principle, and when do you report to an employer or to a judicial authority like the IRS or outside of the role of the CPA and its employment. All right. So we hope we'll have something here by the annual meeting, but that is a very complex issue, and we may not have this solved by the annual meeting. Then independence. Barton Baldwin chaired this for NASBA, and basically I started out looking at trying to conform the term independence to what AICPA has in the Code of Professional Conduct, and also what other entities or regulatory authorities have, like how they define independence, like the GAO or IFAC. So what the task force basically came back with is that we should develop this model rule to conform the current definition of independence more closely to the authoritative bodies, but rather than using the language that's in the Code of Professional Conduct that we currently have, which uses state of mind. Independence is a state of mind. Since the SEC uses the term that a CPA must be independent in fact and in appearance. So the task force, both sides agreed with that, and that will be the recommendation that we will make. Now, registration of foreign auditors. The task force and the committee know more about this than we ever wanted to know, and this has been a huge effort, and we are still looking at this because you have foreign firms who are auditing a foreign firm, but they're filing a 10K with the SEC. So, and when they do that, there are times that on the front page of the 10K, it refers to the principal executive office of the company, the PEO. So, what research has shown is that these firms are using, or the companies and the firm doing the audit, they're using a U.S. address for that PEO, the principal executive office. So we are now to the point that we started out looking at developing a rule or creating a new section of the UAA, because there's nothing in the UAA at all that says that gives guidance on how a foreign firm registers. It only pertains to firms within the 55 jurisdictions. So that's a hurdle we got to get over. So the first hurdle, though, that we're going to do, challenge, and it's the date has, at least one date's been submitted to the SEC for Bishop and Melanson to go visit with the SEC to discuss the problem, see if the SEC will agree to make some changes to the 10K, which could help solve the problem, and also if the SEC would just enforce what is in their corporate financial manual, because it basically says that the CPA signing off on the audit opinion needs to be one that's got recognized by the SEC, and also they need to be registered with the PCAOB. But the problem with being registered with the PCAOB by a foreign firm is that the PCAOB has not made any inspections of those firms. And some of you may be aware that one of the multi-state firms currently has an issue going with the SEC and with China, because China's standards in China say you cannot release the work papers. And the SEC says we want to see the work papers. So there's that issue right now, and so you bring that back bring it down to the state level. So we need to develop a tool within the UAA that state boards can use to have authoritative regulatory authority over these foreign firms coming into their state. Then, and we're still working on that, and it'll probably be in this report next year along with the test. Then acts discreditable. We looked at this after the annual meeting. Nathan Garrett made a presentation and asked that the UAA committee look at the definition of acts discreditable, and so that there would be uniform application of the rules as they relate to discrimination. The task force looked at this and believes that within the Code of Professional Conduct and within the UAA that there are sufficient rules and language within the UAA to cover acts discreditable, and that we do not need to create any additional rules or change the UAA. There's supposed to be Q&A, but that 10 minutes is up, so